As the bus pulled away from their stop, they did not notice that they were being watched. Inside the car, the assassins had time for one last check. All three agreed they had their target. The Red Prince would not escape this time. In 15 seconds, 14 bullets tore into Ahmed Boushiki's body, and it was over. Boushiki's terrified wife caught a glimpse of the assassin's license plate. And across the street, Dagny Bring, a 23-year-old pediatric nurse, had witnessed the entire execution from her window.
The gunshot shattered the tranquility of Lillehammer. Nothing like this had ever happened before, and the frantic emergency call caught local authorities off guard. That night, even their police radios were broken. Yet within the hour, police had managed to set up a roadblock on the only road leading out of Lillehammer. And the Mossad were about to run into problems of their own. At the roadblock, a patrolman noticed a white Volvo approaching with 4 adults inside. The patrolman wrote down the license number of the car as it passed through. The next morning, Dan Erbel and Marianne Gladnikoff drove to the airport to return their rented car. The police had now circulated a description of the Volvo and its license number throughout Norway. A ticket agent noticed the car and notified police. Erbel and Gladnikoff were taken in for questioning, even though the Norwegian police did not think that they were responsible for the execution of Boushiky. But Marianne Gladnikoff was frightened. She was the least experienced of the team, and she had no cover story. Within the hour, the police had the address of the team's safe house in Oslo, where they picked up 2 more members, Sylvia Raphael and Abraham Gemmer. The next morning, Dan Erbel told the police everything he knew, which led to the arrest in Oslo of 2 more members of the team. The execution of a local man sent a chill through Lillehammer. Among the Mossad, the realization it was the wrong man created a crisis. 3 days after the killing, the Israeli government issued a statement denying any involvement. On January 7th, 1974, the 6 Israelis were brought to trial in Oslo. The proceedings were held under the tightest security. Access to the courtroom was strictly limited, and much of the testimony was given in secret. After 26 days, it was over.
Dan Erbel sentenced to 5 years. Marianne Gladnikoff, 2.5 years. Sylvia, 5.5 years. Abraham Gemmer, 5.5 years. Zvi Seinberg, 1 year. And Michael Dorff, acquitted. The 3 assassins had simply vanished.
In all, 12 Israelis helped kill Ahmed Boushiky. Only 5 went to prison, and they were all released within 2 years. When they left, they took something with them. They invade their town at will and murder one of their neighbors. Lillehammer's innocence was gone.
Zvi Zamir retired in Israel. Mike Harari, after leaving Mossad, worked for Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega. After Noriega's fall, Harari escaped to Israel. Dan Erbel, after his release from a Norwegian jail, he returned to Israel and his job in the Mossad. Before retiring in 1989, he headed the Mossad Academy. Maria Gladnikoff resides in Israel. Ali Hassan Salameh, the Red Prince, Mossad finally caught up to him with a car bomb in 1979 in Beirut, Lebanon. Toril Bushiki remained in Norway to raise her daughter Malika alone.
Even though 5 Israelis were sent to prison, the Norwegian court determined that their roles in the murder of Ahmed Busheki were minor compared to those of the actual assassins.
The assassins were never caught. Their escape was aided by the Norwegian Secret Service. In fact, the Norwegian Secret Service had been in on the plot to kill Ali Hassan Salameh right from the beginning. The plan was, once his body had been identified, they would take over the investigation from the local police.
But Victor, is it true that Israel has never publicly admitted to their mistake?
No, they haven't. We have in our possession a letter from the Prime Minister of Israel to the Prime Minister of Norway. It's dated March 3rd, 1995. In it, Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel, states that it is a policy of all governments in Israel to deny all allegations which attribute various actions or events to the Israeli Mossad. That policy, also known as plausible deniability, is widely used in the world of espionage. You know, Lynn, what's really sad about this is that over all these years, nobody found it even necessary to apologize to Busheki's wife for killing her husband.
From your experience with the Mossad, what are the characteristics that distinguish this hit as a Mossad hit?
I think the first thing that would point out to Mossad would be that's been used. It was a .22 caliber. The few other agencies that carry out these so-called wet operations use a larger gauge. The .22 is quiet, lightweight, and easy to conceal, yet deadly at short range, another trait of a Mossad hit.
And what happened to the actual assassins?
They were reprimanded.
For killing the wrong person?
No, they were reprimanded for doing a bad job. When they got back to the hotel, Mike Harari and Tzvi Zamir asked them, "Is Ali Hassan Salameh dead?" They said yes. Mike Harari then asked, "Who checked?" They all looked at each other. Turns out not the driver nor any of the assassins had actually checked the pulse, which is regular procedure in a hit. Before you leave the scene of the crime, you make sure that the body is a dead body and not just badly wounded. They haven't done that. Therefore, they were not doing a professional job.
But that was not their only problem. Other things started to go wrong. After the hit squad ditched their car, they were driven to safety by a Norwegian Secret Service driver. The driver was under orders from a Mossad agent recruited from the higher echelons of the Norwegian Secret Service. The agent informed Mike Harari later that night that the man they had killed was not Ali Hassan Salameh, but an innocent waiter. So you see, Lynn, it now became a local police matter outside the jurisdiction of the Norwegian Secret Service. What made it worse was that the local police were quickly closing in on the Norwegian Secret Service's involvement in the affair. The exposure was threatening to cost Mossad its most valuable agent in Scandinavia. To prevent this from happening, Mike Harari instructed Dan Arbel to sacrifice himself and his team, hoping to throw the police investigators off their tracks. Actually, Lynn, when Dan Arbel showed up at the Oslo airport, his intention was to get caught. The irony of this tragic affair came to light several years later, when a captured Palestinian terrorist in the south of Lebanon added the final twist in this wilderness of mirrors. He told his interrogators what had already been suspected for years by the Mossad, that the man who set them up in Lillehammer was none other than the Red Prince himself.
I guess we'll never really know how many unsolved deaths can be attributed to the deadly game of espionage.
That's right. It was only by chance that this time the Mossad was caught in the act.